You brought Dana White aboard.
Oh, he's awesome. Been talking to him for
He's
a
the
while
best.
about that. I mean, he's like, talk about like an amazing entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I just want, like, because I control our company, I have the benefit of not having to convince the board not to fire me, right? It's like a normal corporate environment. It's like basically the CEO just tries to like, they're just trying to convince the board to like let them have their job and pay them more. It's like, all right, the board doesn't pay me except for security. And I'm not worried about losing my job because I control the majority of the voting in the company. So I actually get to use our board to like have the smartest people who I can get to have around me help work on these problems. So it's like, all right, who are the people I want? Like, I just want like the best entrepreneurs and people who've created different things. And like, I mean, Dana's like this guy who, I mean, he basically took the sport from being this like, I think it was viewed as like this pretty marginal thing when he got started, right? I mean, I think John McCain was trying to outlaw it, and now it's like, I think it and F1 are the two fastest growing sports in the world. It's got hundreds of millions of people viewing it. It's like, I mean, what Dana's done with the UFC is like one of the most legendary business stories, and the brand is beloved, and I think he's just so he's like a world-class entrepreneur. And he's just like he's got a strong backbone. And I think part of what the conversation that I had with him around joining our board was, okay, like we have a lot of governments and folks around the world putting a lot of pressure on our company. And like, we need some like strong people who are going to basically, help advise us on how to handle some of these situations. And so, yeah. That's but yeah, I mean, running this company is not for the faint of heart. I mean, there's definitely a lot of pressure from like all these different governments, and then it's like, okay, I could spend all my time doing that, but I'm not even a politician. Like I just want to spend my time building things, right? So it's yeah, I think Dana's gonna be great.
He's the best,
great entrepreneur.
I agree with everything you said about him. Without him, none of the UFC would have ever taken place the way it did. I mean, you needed the Fertitta brothers. They had to come in with all the money and the vision, and it's really funny because Eddie Bravo and I, we've been fans for so long. Eddie Bravo and I went to a live event in the 90s. I was working for the UFC as a backstage interviewer, and he went there with Ricky Rocket. You know Ricky Rocket from Poison?
No.
He's a fucking black belt under the Machados.
Huh.
He's legit, super legit. Really nice guy, too. Anyway, so Ricky Rocket and him were at the UFC, and we were talking about it in the 90s. We're like, you know what the sport needs? Because we were in love with it. We're like this, but we were martial artists. We were like, the sport needs some billionaires who just throw a ton of money at it and just get it huge. And then the Fertitta brothers come along, billionaires with a ton of money who are huge fans of the sport, just love the sport. We're hiring people like Frank Shamrock to come in and train them and work out, and we're taking jiu-jitsu with John Lewis, and they were really getting into it. And so then they buy the UFC for like $2 million, which is probably the greatest purchase ever, except they were $40+ million in the hole when they financed The Ultimate Fighter. And then that was 2005, and then this one fight takes place with Stephan Bonnar and Forrest Griffin on television. It's so wild and so crazy that millions of people start tuning in. The sport's born. Then you have Chuck Liddell, who was the champion at the time, who was the most fan-friendly champion you could ever have, just a fucking berserker, with just a psychopath with a fucking head tattoo and a mohawk, crushing people. In his prime, he was the perfect poster guy for the UFC because he was just smashing people and then throwing his arms back like rah in a cage. It was nuts. I'm sure you've seen a lot of Chuck Liddell fights, right?
Yeah.
It was just the whole thing took off, but without Dana, it would have never taken place. The guy's tireless. That man, I could call him up. I'll call him up at like 2 o'clock in the morning sometime. Like there's some fight going on, and I'll say, "Hey, this is going on next weekend. I'm so fucking pumped." And we'll talk for hours. For hours. He just wants to talk about fights. He's like so locked in, like all the time, and he's just like so driven. And now that he's healthy, like, oh my God, he's got what Gary Brecka's done for him is incredible. He lost all this weight, got super thin, real fit, super healthy. He doesn't fuck around with alcohol anymore. He just eats healthy food. He looks great. Now he's got even more energy.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Well, we're lucky to have some of it.
Yeah, we are. And you know what? We're also lucky that you